Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time to hop on to the webinar today. Whether it's live and in person here, or if you're catching it on a later time on a recording. Gonna be talking about the latest release of PROtrade here, and this is, looking at the version here, is 5.1.0.1481 or higher than that. You can get that latest version and have access to some of these new features. About a year ago or so, we released what we at that point said one of the most exciting releases that we'd ever done for PROtrade. And that was because of the release of the new feature presets, which is over here. Not really going to go over that much today, but I encourage you, if you aren't already familiar with presets, that really is something that you want to get a hold of. But now, about a year later, we're introducing or releasing yet another, maybe most exciting release that we've done for PROtrade here as we roll out this kits feature. The concept of kits really is that you'd be able to call one thing, and as a result, you get a bunch of other things that are driven off of that parent item or that one item. So we'll hop into that in just a minute. But just to review, actually, just really quickly, a couple of other smaller improvements that are also in this latest release. One of the other newer features, again, maybe something that you're not familiar with yet, over in the project tab, we've released the material list area, where now you can organize your materials into different packs, different collections of materials. You can add more packs. Again, not going to spend a ton of time here, but just to remind you that you can organize things this way now, not only just based on like page name. So one of the new features in this latest version, a small improvement, is the ability to actually batch assign a group of products to a particular pack. So you can always come over here and you can drag and drop these guys up here into the packs and so on. But over in the plan tab now, like you can see, we have this pack column. And instead of having to do those one at a time where you right click and go to pack and set them all, you can actually just select everything in your list. So like whether it's 2 items or 40 items. And if you right click now on that batch of items, you can send them all to wherever you want them to be. In this case, I've just moved everything to the first material shipment. So being able to batch, send stuff to a pack, that's now available in this list. And then one other thing that's new is over here in the project tab, back in that material list section. When it comes to these packs, you're able to add a report multiplier. So if you right click on a particular pack, you can set its report multiplier. Instead of it just being 1, you can have, double the material, triple the material, quadruple, or whatever is necessary or needed for your particular application. So that might be something like, you've drawn 1 unit but you're going to build 5 of these things, or you have, one building and it's like this going to be or 1 unit as a part of a building, and you need to multiply that out for the 25 times that particular unit is in a particular project. So different ways you could leverage that report multiplier, and so that's been released also in this version, so you can take advantage of that. And so from there, now we'll go ahead and jump back over to the kits and this new feature. And I'm going to jump over here down on the left-hand side of the screen to the database tab. A couple of changes in the applications area that you may have noticed. So it's just mostly just visual theming stuff as far as how stuff is arranged, column colors and stuff like that. A few different areas where the column order is a little bit different, just trying to make it a little bit more consistent. Same with products and presets. So you have a pretty consistent view across all of those different tabs now. But for some of you who maybe aren't even familiar with applications, maybe you've just always stayed in the plan tab and you just go through and right click on something and rename it here and call it whatever it is that you're calling, and it will show up in your report that way. You can do that. But if you're not familiar with applications, I'm just going to delete those things for the moment. Come back to the database tab. The concept of applications is that, like you can see here, roof shingles. So if I'm a roofer and I am frequently calling things, I need to mark them as either being roof shingles. Maybe I have one for tile, maybe I have another one for cedar shake, or or just like a more of a commercial type of roof situation. You can mark different application types. So if I'm coming over here to the plan, what that would look like is I could capture this area for this roof that I have. And then as I finish that, of course, I could go over to the takeoff items list and label it, but rather than having to, click through all those things and type it all out, I can just come to the application and say, hey, this is roof shingles. So I've got that assigned now. In a similar fashion, if I look back in the database, looking at products, similar concept there is I can call a particular product type. So like here, you can see that I've got a bundle of architectural shingles. So instead of just labeling it as that, I can actually right click here, come to product, and I'll say I want to use those architectural shingles. Now the benefit, and one of the benefits here, and again, depends on how you use products, but if I hit Control P to pull up the report of the actual outputs, you can see it's taken that square footage, and based on the information that it knows about the architectural shingles, because I told it the size, the dimensions, and its coverage, it says, not only, it doesn't just tell me how many square feet I need for that, it tells me I need this many bundles. So it's basically doing the math. It can also apply a waste factor and so on and so forth. So that's the general concept of, looking back here in the database, of products and applications. Lots more stuff you can do there. And these things have, for those of you who aren't aware, these things have been actually here for a very long time, if you haven't leveraged them before. But what's new now then is this kits concept. And that actually belongs to applications, is how this is going to work. And so the concept is, even as this time I had roof shingles and I called roof shingles and I essentially got roof shingles. Let's say that I, as a roofer, I'm saying, well, whenever I call roof shingles, I just want to get underlayment to go with it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to right click, or I'm going to come over here to the edit option for my roof shingles, and let's see how we could change our roof shingles application to actually do that. So I'm going to click on the edit button. You see my roof shingles, and right now I don't have any waste. I could enter that. But down here is this kit items. So I can hit the plus button. It's going to give me a line item here, this new one. And just for simplicity's sake right now, I'm just going to leave it as, it's just an area, but I'll just rename it as underlayment. And again, maybe I'll just leave the product as blank for the moment. We'll come back to that in a minute. And then we come down to the equation of, how is this item going to be driven? And so as we think about how does underlayment relate to the roof shingles? Well, maybe in my case, it's going to be the same square footage. The same square footage that I want to drive my roof shingles, I want to use the same square foot amount to drive how much underlayment that I would need. You'll see as you come down to the equation, there's these little helpful buttons, and these will change depending on what the parent application is. So in this case, since the parent application is an area, I'm measuring a square footage. Now I have the option to, as I mouse over this, the tooltip says this is the total square feet from the parent input. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a little equation here that says how much am I inputting into this child item. In this case, I'm going to click the area to get that filled in here. And I'm going to leave it just as that, which basically says take whatever area is being used in the parent. Whether if it's 2,000 feet, then put 2,000 feet down here. If it's 4,000, then put 4,000 down here. Whatever is used in there, reference that and place it there. So I've got that. I've got my line item here entered. I'm going to choose to save all those changes. You can see here my roof shingles now has one kit item. If I mouse over it, it says, it's underlayment. Now if I come back to the plan, notice that, everything kind of looks the same here, but that's actually been now applied to the project. Now, if I come over here to the project, you can see it's in the unassigned pack. Maybe I'll move this to my first material shipment. And let's take a look in the project tab and see what that looks like. So here's the material list. Here's my first material shipment. And here down at the bottom is the roof shingles. The architectural shingles, 2,600 square feet about. And that's going to result in my 80 bundles of shingles. But now that I've added on this kit item, notice that it's called underlayment. No particular product, but I'm going to get about 2,600 square feet. And the output's going to be 2,651 square feet. And that's actually how it will show on the report. 261 square feet of not particular product, but it's for the purpose of underlayment. So I could adjust that further and say, well, that's pretty close, but let's come back over here to the edit the items, and I'm going to click on this line item in my kit so I can edit it in particular. Come to the product, and maybe I'll pick this 4 square roll of 15-pound roofing felt. So I want this to populate in there automatically for me as well. And maybe in addition to that, maybe the way that I think about underlayment is well, because underlayment overlaps itself and also goes in places that maybe the shingles themselves don't always go as far as how much I use. I want to take the area that I use for my shingles and I want to apply, 5% to that. So I'm going to multiply the area times 1.05 so that I'm basically adding on an additional 5%. And I'll click Save Changes. And that then gets applied throughout the project where that's being used. So if we look back over in the Project tab, you can see here now that our square footage that's being applied here is higher than the parent item because we applied that extra 5%. And then you'll also notice that since I'm picking a product now, it's taking that total amount of square footage. It knows the coverage because of the dimensions I put in that product, and I'm getting a total of 7 of those 4 square rolls of the 15-pound felt in order to handle that situation there. So if I look at the output, again, it's going to reflect basically the same thing. So that's the general concept here of able to call a parent item and then call a child item as a result. But as you consider that idea, really, it's the sky's the limit in a certain sense of, how far can you take this and start looking for, well, what are the ways could I leverage this? So for example, let's come back to the plan tab and I'm going to stay in the roofing industry, but this really has applications across all different types of industries. So you as you're in your own there will be able to determine how those work best. So for example, let's say that I want to capture, I'm going to go to the gutter side of this roof here. I'm going to trace how much linear footage of starter shingle, so as we start up the side of these of this roof here, we need to have a starter shingle row. But as I look at that, I might realize, oh, well, you know what? That dimension there, that linear footage that I'm measuring there, not only does it apply to the starter shingles, it also applies to the flashing that I'll, at the edge flashing that I'll need along that edge. And maybe in my part of the country, that also would apply to ice and water shield as well, that linear footage. So I could take that one line item and I could turn that, in this case, into 3 things that I'm shipping. And, maybe there's more. Maybe there's nails that would apply. Maybe there's, who knows what else that you might choose to associate with that particular measurement. So in this case, let's go back over to the database and look at the applications and let's create a couple of these. So let's first of all, I've got my my Eve flashing. Since this is going to be a measurement of length, it's not square footage, it's really just length that I'm measuring. I'm going to call this a length application. And I'll leave the waste as 0 and I'll click Save. So I've added that one. Notice also you can set default colors for this, how labels show up, prefixes and suffixes. So lots of ways you can customize this to get the output you like. I'm going to add another one here. We'll call this Ice and Water Shield application. Okay, oops. Helps if you put the D on. Okay, and again, this is going to be a length. Click Save. So now we've got that one. And now let's say that I want my my starter shingle. Or starter shingles. So I'm going to again use length. Click Save Changes. So now I've got these 3 different applications that I could use. And I could use them independently. And maybe that's how I'd want to use it. Or I could actually use them in a batch together. So for example, here's the starter shingles. Let's say that I wanted to use this starter shingles and I wanted it to drive my ice and water shield and my Eve flashing. So I'm going to click Edit and come here and maybe, this is how I'm going to choose to do it. I'm going to add a little plus sign at the end of my starter shingles. That way I know, oh, if I pick this, I'm going to get additional items with it. That way I'm not confused on the other side to wonder whether or not I'm getting other things. So I'll just put that there. I'm going to come down here to my kit items, hit a plus button. I've got length. I'm going to choose the application. Instead of it just being a plain ordinary length, I'm going to choose Eve flashing. And then for my product, I'll use, I don't have an Eve flashing product yet, so I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to match the length of the parent item. And that'll be good for that. So now I'm going to add another one. In this case, I want to add the ice and water shield. So I'm going to pick the ice and water shield application. I'm going to pick the 36-inch by 7-foot Grace ice and water shield product that I've created. Again, I'm going to pick the length from the parent item, but let's say in this case that I have 2 rows of ice and water shield every time that I'm running along at the low edge of the roof. Maybe that's just what I need in my area. So in this case, instead of just using the length, I'm going to use the length times 2. That way that I get enough material for 2 runs of that material. Click Save Changes. And I'm going to go back, before we finish, I'm going to go back to the products and I'll add that product in. So here's a quick lesson on adding a product in. I'm going to add in that 3-inch by 10-foot eave edge flashing. And here's a great example for using attributes for a product. So rather than having to add in a whole bunch of different versions of this, of nearly the same product, I can add an attribute that says galvanized, and maybe I have one that's white and one that's brown. And so now I could choose between those depending on what particular project I'm working on and what's needed. I'll leave it as galvanized as my default, and I'll enter my dimensions here of 3 inches and 10 feet for my length. That way it will actually calculate appropriately for me. Click Save. So I've added that in here. So now that means I can come back to my applications, come to my starter shingles, and here's my eave flashing. Notice that I don't have any product here right now, but if I click it to make that edit, I can say I want to use the 3-inch eave edge flashing and click Save All Changes. So now I've entered this and I have this kit. It's going to give me 2 kit items, the eave flashing and the ice, water, and shield going with my starter shingles. So if I go to the plan, come over here and I'm going to assign this. I'm going to go to application and I'm going to say I want to pick my starter shingles. And for my product, I'll pick my starter shingle roll. Click OK. And so now I've got that, and I'm going to set that in my first material pack. So let's set that down here in my first material pack. And so it's there. Now if I hit Control P and look at the report, even though I've only drawn 2 items, I'm getting all of those other items as a result based on those entries that I've made there. And you also could leverage this further is let's say that I have maybe drawn some more of this on a different page, or maybe it's on the same page, but I didn't roll it up together. So I'm going to just to demonstrate this, I've collected more stuff over here on this side. I'm going to assign it basically the same thing. I'm going to call it my starter shingles. My product's going to go to my starter shingle roll, and I'm going to set that into the same pack. And let's just take a look and see what that looks like on that side. So I'm going to jump over to my project tab. Here's my material list. So here I have a couple different line items of the same thing, right? I have a starter shingles, 163 feet. Here's the other line item, starter shingles plus 48 feet. Still got these couple of other ones. Now you can be aware that there might be reasons that you want to keep line items separate as you draw them out so that you can handle them differently, or maybe they're coming from different pages even. But even though they're separate and they're different line items here, if we hit Control P, like on an itemized report, it's going to take all of those like items and roll them up together. That way, you're still getting a consolidated output as a result. So that's kind of the quick overview of kits. Again, like I mentioned before, there's, we kind of stayed in the roofing realm, but whether it's, maybe you're in the drywall business, if you want your gyp board to drive how much tape and mud that you have, or maybe you're in the painting business and you want to, hey, if I call paint, as a top coat, I want there to be so much primer that goes with that. Or if I have, if I'm in the flooring business and I want to send so much nails or glue because of the type of products that I'm calling, or even in all of those industries, a labor line item perhaps, where if you wanted to have a separate labor pack and you wanted to have labor driven out according to that. So lots of different things, lots of different ways that you could leverage this to make it more efficient to work through your estimating process for a job. Finally, just to wrap things up, a related feature that also has come out with this version, and that is the ability to export or share the things that are in the database. And so not only kits, but applications, products, and presets. So if you maybe work on 2 different computers and you want an easy way to get all of your stuff over onto another computer, or perhaps you work with multiple different people in your office and you want to be able to have share around a database that someone's put together with all these kits and things. The way you can do that is you can come up to the Tools menu and go to the Export Database option. That's going to pull up this, and you can select all or some of the items that you have that you want to be able to share around with different people, whether they're presets, products, and so on and so forth. Pick out the things that you like, and you can export those out, and that will create a little file on your desktop that you can then pass over, whether it's email it around or put it on a shared location. And then once you do that, you then the other person on the other side or yourself on a different machine can come to the Tools tab in the software and come to the Import Database, and then you'd be able to walk through that and import those products, those applications, those presets and things into your specific job. So that's again the review of what's latest in this version. I'm going to come to Tool or come to Help and About. So again, that's version 5.1.0.1481. If you have any questions at all related to especially this kits feature, you're wondering, how do I leverage this more? How can I make this work better in my particular industry? Don't hesitate to give us a call or chat with us on our site. A quick reminder of how you can get to that. If you come to the Help menu, go to Online Learning Center, you'll notice what will show up in the lower right-hand corner of that site will be also a chat service that you can type into, and we'll help you out wherever we can. Also love to give your feedback. You'll notice in the upper right corner, you have that option for giving feedback. It was love to hear from you related to kits, of maybe additional features you would like to see as it relates to kits so that you could use those more effectively in your business. Again, love to hear how these things could be improved and make the software that much more beneficial to you. Thanks again for taking the time to hop on today, and we'll look forward to hearing from you and talking to you more later. Thanks so much.